Ian Jackson becomes the second departing freshman this offseason, to mention not being able to fully showcase what he can do. Do we have an issue in Chapel Hill?
This is Tyler Hansbrough, and you're listening to Locked On Tar Heels.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? It's Wednesday, June 11th, 2025. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Schade, and you're joining me at the place to get your Tar Heels content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Special shout out to all you everydayers who are here with us, all the members of the Locked On Tar Heels Discord, and our great Locked On Tar Heels insiders as well. Thanks for making us your first listen or watch of the day. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Man, that's great. Get in on it right now. Coming up on the show today, Ian Jackson is now the second departing freshman to mention, hey, I didn't get to show everything I can do in Chapel Hill. Is that a problem, or is it just like, yeah, okay, move along? We'll talk about that. Bill Belichick had a summer press conference on Tuesday. Some interesting takeaways from that. And some more on the House settlement. Might the ACC get squeezed on both sides? I'll explain what I mean about that coming up later in the show. All right. This Ian Jackson thing, I'll show my cards early on it. Basically, my question is, I want to evaluate if we have a problem. Because a couple weeks ago at the draft combine, Drake Powell talked about not being able to show everything he can do. Ian Jackson on his podcast recently did the same. So they've both now said some format or form or fashion of, at Carolina, I was not allowed or able to show everything I can do. So, Houston, do we have a problem? In my opinion, no, we do not. Let me give a little more context of what Ian Jackson's comments were, as well as Drake Powell's, and then I'll say more about why I think there's not a problem. Going back to Ian's commitment, he committed to Carolina on a surprise, not surprise the day, but surprise that it was Carolina, not Kentucky, morning of January 2023. And then Rick Pitino hired about 2 months later in March of 2023. And there was wild speculation all over the place. Hey, will Rick Pitino, is he actively trying to lure Ian Jackson away from Chapel Hill to stay in state there and go to St. John's? At the time, I think the thought was, yeah, he absolutely is. I thought that. But that Ian kept reaffirming his commitment to Carolina. So it was like, do your worst, Ricky P. We got him, right? But again, much to Ian's credit, always stuck with Carolina. Well, then on his podcast this week, his co-host asked him, as part of their conversation, what made you feel like it was time for a change? His initial answer, he just said simply, a different opportunity. And then he went on to say, quote, I feel like at Carolina, shout out to those guys, though, great people, Carolina wasn't for me. It was some things I couldn't show or I couldn't do on the floor, end quote. And then went on to talk about Coach Pitino at various times, talked about how St. John's has been winning, the opportunity for him to play at Madison Square Garden, 11, 12 home games, the opportunity to play under Coach Pitino, who is going to get him to the league, knows all of that stuff, etc. And so there was this, I don't know how I want to say it, this not spoken version of Rick Pitino is going to be able to do what Hubert Davis couldn't do for me, is how I interpret it. Here's what subtext. That's the word I'm looking for. The subtext was saying Rick Pitino can do for me what I don't think Hubert Davis was able to do. Okay, I hear that. And then let me remind you of Drake Powell's comments back at the combine. He said, quote, I feel like I'm the same two-way player that was coming into college. Obviously, I don't think I got to showcase that at UNC, but the potential is still there, end quote. At the time when Drake said that, let me take you back to what my takeaway from that was. A couple things. This guy going into the NBA draft, do you really expect him to say, here I am, finished product, take me as I am? No. because Drake Powell is going to be drafted here in a couple weeks based on his upside and potential and ceiling and that kind of stuff. And so if he comes out and says, oh, yeah, what you saw at Carolina, my game, that was it. That's Drake Powell, 100% in the thing. And I also kind of reading between the lines, this is something I thought of later. I didn't think of the day when I podcasted about it. But when he says, obviously, I don't think I got to showcase that at UNC. To me, there's also part of him saying, I didn't do everything I could do. Right? You hear what I'm saying there? Like when he's saying, the reason he's saying, obviously, at least in some part to me, has to be because he's recognizing the self-awareness of, I wasn't fully the basketball player I could be. Maybe at some level he's saying that's on Carolina, but I think at some level he's also saying, and that's on Drake. I didn't think about that at the time, but thinking back on it, that was one of my takeaways. So I think the prevailing assumption is that this is a bad look for Carolina. Wow, Drake Powell said he couldn't showcase everything he could do at Carolina. Now Ian Jackson is saying, well, they didn't let me cook, basically, right? And so is it a bad look for the Tar Heels, or is this a misunderstanding of what Ian was being asked to do? You know, one of the things that Rick Pitino has said is Ian Jackson is going to be my point guard. Well, that's when I'm wearing my national college basketball hat, my Locked On college basketball hat, one of the things I've said is I think this St. John's team is very talented this year, but I'm concerned about their point guard situation because I don't think that's Ian. And so, for Ian, maybe it's a misunderstanding of what he's best at. Maybe his issue at Carolina was a misunderstanding of role or place. Yes, you want a freshman to come in and be able to perform, somebody that is ranked that highly. But they don't always pop off in a Zion Williamson sort of way, in a Kobe White sort of way, right? Like that's not everybody. And Ian certainly had his moments, right? But he also had others where he's relegated to coming off the bench. Now, is that because Carolina wasn't letting him cook or because he wasn't cooking? Maybe it's a yes. But I on one hand, I see both sides of it. It is not a good look for Carolina to have multiple players, multiple five-star freshmen, both say, I couldn't be me. I couldn't show everything I can do. Externally, that's not a good look for the Tar Heels. Absolutely. You cannot deny that. And I won't try to, despite my glass half full tendencies. But on the other side, I would say also, yeah, I hear you. But your job as a basketball player is to play as part of a team. And if your coaching staff is asking you to do certain things, play certain roles, then you need to do that. Right. And I think that's another thing that Drake's acknowledging is, hey, a lot of the season I was asked to play out of position. I was playing the 4 instead of my more natural 3. And then you all saw what I can do when I went back to the 3. That's part of that too. And so with Ian, I'm more so than Drake, like, he's saying both sides of it, right? Because he's also talking about good people at Carolina. I love the school, that side of it. But look, ultimately the poll to go home, that's a big deal. But he also talked about on the podcast that wasn't the only thing, that wasn't the biggest thing. And so I would suggest we not wish any ill will towards Ian Jackson. But I think there are some wiser words to choose. And I get it because I do a podcast every day and I talk and talk and talk and I say dumb things sometimes. But I think sometimes just in the course of saying things, you end up saying maybe things you don't really mean or intend to say, or maybe you do. Maybe you think that at the time. Ultimately, it's a bit of a me first mentality of I didn't get to do what I could do. Whereas I would like my players, if I was a coach, to be saying, while I might not have gotten to show what I believe to be the fullness of my skill set, what an opportunity it was to be part of this team and to do the things I was asked. Now, I know the season was up and down. There is no denying that either. But I don't think this is a massive knock against the Tar Heels. Again, you have to recognize it. I acknowledge that. But nah, that ain't it. I mean, look at the guys coming. You've got Luka Bogavac coming in. You've got Henri Veesaar. You've got Kyan Evans. You've got Jonathan Powell. You've got these dudes coming to play. And you've got many other happy customers. I don't hear RJ saying those things on the way out the door. Seth turned around and came back out of the portal last offseason. I didn't hear him grumble. You know what I'm saying? And so it's just like, we gotta balance all these things when we get hot and bothered about this. I'm not too terribly worried. Now, Bill Belichick, let's move to the football field, is focused on the task at hand. And also, I'm curious if Coach Belichick is going to be able to find some crafty loopholes in the house settlement to be able to use to Carolina's advantage. Because when I think who can find advantages where other people don't, Bill Belichick's name pops up in my brain immediately. We'll talk about that in just a second. Right after I tell you about game time, y'all, there's nothing like the NBA playoffs. And right now we're right in the middle of the NBA finals. Game 3 is tonight. The intensity, buzzer beaters, the fans losing their minds, the parents of players losing their minds. It's the kind of atmosphere you must want to experience live. And boy, this year's matchups have delivered in a big way. And if you want in, Game Time makes it fast and easy to get seats, even for these biggest playoff games. Prices on the app, interestingly, actually drop the closer you get to tip-off. So if you want to wait till later today to try to grab some seats, do it. Because with killer last-minute deals, panoramic seat views, and no surprise fees, Game Time is a total game changer. I love that I can see my exact view from my seats before I buy. No surprises. The app makes it ridiculously simple to get these tickets. 2 taps and you're done. And with Game Time Guarantee, you know you're getting the best deal. If you find a better price, same section, same row, they're going to credit you 110% of the difference. As I said, Game 3 tonight in Gamebridge in Indianapolis. You can get in the door for $550. And I know that might sound steep, but it's the NBA Finals, for crying out loud. That's a good ticket. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Terms do apply. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. On Tuesday, Bill Belichick held a press conference, like kind of a summer press conference. He said, hey, just before we get into July and July 4th and all this stuff, I just wanted to be able to update. So we talked for about 20 minutes answering questions. Most of it was about how he's bringing together basically a brand new team. Obviously, there were questions about the Jordan Hudson side of things and his personal life and things like that. And the house settlement came up. Where I want to start is I just want to smile because it's been a not great couple months for the Bill Belichick will never coach a game crowd. It's been a bad couple months for the, Bill Belichick's going to jump out at the June 1st mark when the contract numbers change. All of those people screaming and writing their articles to have something to write about. Where are you at? What are you saying now? You dredging up another Jordan Hudson story? Cool. Keep doing it. I don't know how successful Carolina will be this year because it's year 1. They came in late. The staff did to really get things going. But I just hope the Tar Heels have a phenomenal year and just win a lot of football games. It would just be so cathartic for all of this, right? Anyway, great stuff. And part of the reason I say that is literally the first thing out of his mouth is talking about how great things have been around the Carolina campus in Chapel Hill, all the sporting events going on. Obviously, he's at multiple of the baseball games this weekend. Unfortunately, a little bit of a bad jinx, whatever. Fine. You keep coming, coach. Big in on lacrosse and was that the women's stuff. I mean, it's just, again, Stark contrast of what he's saying and doing compared to so many talking at length about him peacing out. Cool. Nice try. Next, right? Remember, he said it like at his welcoming press conference, some version of, why would I do this and go somewhere? Right? Like, come on, what are we doing? Anyway, one of the questions he's asked is, Coach, there's been so much interest since you got hired in you as a coach and also in your personal life. Lots of reporting out there. What do you think is the biggest misconception about you in your time at Carolina so far? And I love that this kind of goes back to a softer version of the grumpy dude that you got for the Patriots. Sometimes he just basically sidesteps it and says, I'll say in summary, and then I'll read you the whole quote. I'm just trying to get us to be a good football team, is basically what he said. He says, quote, look, I'm really focused on doing my job here at Carolina to help our football team to get better every day, to stack those days together, training days, preparation days, days out on the field. And we've done that. Our staff's done a great job of working hard to do that. That's my big focus. Is there noise out there? We've always dealt with that. I love that he's like, yeah, all the time we experience that. And he's finished with, our job is to build the football team and build their individual careers, end quote. Makes no apologies for that. And was directly asked, I didn't catch the reporter who asked, forgive me, but she said, basically, do you expect your girlfriend to be on the sideline going forward? I mean, very direct question, and it's Bill Belichick, so she's going to get a very direct answer. And I'll tell you, go back and watch the timing of this. He was ready. He was ready with this answer because he's got to know he's going to get this question, right? And so he says, no, she doesn't have any role in the UNC football program, end quote. I mean, that language was crafted and ready, right? And so there you go. Very definitively from Coach Belichick with that. The other thing I want to mention, though, several takeaways from the press conference, some on guys' progressions on Thad Young coming in, playing. He said he could play anywhere in the secondary. We'll see where that plays out. Talk some about the various quarterbacks and everything that's going on there. But was asked about the house settlement, and I hadn't even thought about this until he was answering the question, and then I was like, oh, is there something there? He says it's a little bit longer, but stay with me. Quote, it's quite lengthy and technical, talking about the verbiage of the house settlement. We have people on our staff, lawyers and so forth, that are looking at it, so we have a full understanding of exactly what we're dealing with. We did that over the weekend. Mike Lombardi and I will be meeting with those people that are advising us on what exactly it means. Catch some of this. What we can do, how we need to configure things a little bit differently than maybe we've done the last couple months. Again, a lot of this was anticipated, but now that it's more formalized, we'll have to make sure we're compliant with every part of it, from roster size to payments to fair market value or reasonable market value, terms like that, the Deloitte part of it. There's a lot of things that are interconnected, and we just want to make sure that we understand everything before we march too far forward. And then this final one, too, went back to what I was saying. We'll see how all that plays out, what the boundaries are or aren't going forward. And just think with me about Bill Belichick. This is a guy who will find anything he can to his advantage to give his team a leg up. And so if that's verbiage in the house settlement that allows him to do something that somebody else might not catch, he's going to exploit it. And so when he says, we'll see how all that plays out, what the boundaries are or aren't going forward, that's because he's going to test. Oh, man, it's making me think of Jurassic Park. Maybe you've seen Jurassic Park. They talk about how smart the velociraptors are and how they're testing different parts of the fence to see what they can do and what they can get away with. It's exactly like that to me. Bill Belichick is going to have these lawyers tell him where the soft parts are and what Carolina as a staff can do to tweak things in their favor. What that is, I have no clue at this point. I'm just saying watch for that to be a thing, because Bill Belichick wants to say, how can I do just even if I can give my team the tiniest thing that puts them in a better position to win, will do it. And he's not going to give that away, right? Like he is famous for that. Like, why would I tell you any more than I have to? Because everything I tell you gives you an advantage over me, or gives team X, who might be listening in on this, an advantage over me and my team. So I'm not going to say anything more. But I just, that hit me. And I was like, oh, Bill Belichick wants to use this thing. So we're going to see. And it's coming, man. Here we go. It's Wednesday, June 11th. Camp's going to be here before you know it. And then we're going to be figuring things out, man. Going to be really, really, really interesting. All right. Speaking of the house settlement, it could be wildly advantageous for non-football playing schools and conferences. And we're already worrying about getting squeezed on one side by the SEC and Big Ten. Might we get squeezed now on the other side by the Big East? I'll explain what I mean coming up in just a second. Each day this week so far on the show, we've talked about a couple different angles and points of the house settlement. On Monday, you can go back and listen to it or watch it, but we discussed the revenue share side of it and how much Carolina will be able to dole out amongst their various school teams. Excuse me. We'll want to talk some more about that today. We talked some about the NIL side of it and the NIL Go Clearinghouse, that kind of stuff. And then yesterday on the show, we talked about roster limits and maybe some of the effects of that. Today, one of the things I want to look at is, go with me on this. If Carolina has $20.5 million, which is the rough estimate of what the rev share is going to be, or can be up to that point, right? Like it's not money that the NCAA just hands out. Carolina, it's got to come from them. If they have $20.5 million, and the expectation, again, is that a lot of schools will follow a 75% to football, 15% to men's basketball, 5% to women's basketball, 5% to everybody else. The reason for that is that's the percentage that's going to be followed in giving the $2.8 billion in back money for athletes from the past decade. So for Carolina, if let's just do some quick math on that. I haven't really honestly done it. So 20.5 times 0.75 is 15.375. So 15.375 of that 20.5 million would go to Carolina football. 0.15 times 20.5, 3.075 million would go to the men's basketball team. That's 15%, and then on down from there. But think with me, if you will. Let's say you have this $20.5 million, but you don't have a football team taking up, how much of it was it that I said again? 20.5 times 0.75, $15.375 million. And so if I can take that chunk of money and give it to what is actually the highest, since we don't have football, the highest revenue earning team in our athletic department is the men's basketball team. Creighton, Marquette. We'll see with UConn, because UConn actually has a football team, but Gonzaga, and think about it for Gonzaga, who's going up against the rest of the Pac-12 who will have football teams. And oh, by the way, Gonzaga, from the reporting back at the time they joined the newly reformed Pac-12, which again isn't for this year, that'll be reformed next year, gets an equal share of the revenue side of things as everyone else in the Pac-12. And so think about what an advantage that is. Carolina men's basketball having, and I will say this though, each school can decide what they want to do with their money. So if Carolina doesn't want to go 75, 15, 5 to women's basketball, 5 to everybody else, they can do whatever they want. That's ultimately up to Bubba Cunningham and everyone else dealing with that. But my goodness, that $15 million not having to go to football for some of these other basketball powerhouses, that is something that Carolina is going to have to reckon with, as are the other football playing schools, the SEC, Big Ten, etc. Now, let me also say this, though. Some of those, like the Big East, Gonzaga, whatever, they might not be able to dole out that full $20.5 million to everybody. They might not have the resources to do that because of not having football. So maybe there is a proportional thing down, if that makes sense, to where we're not paying our football guys out of that rev share money, but also we don't have as much rev share money to share around. So just keep your eyes on that. But it is something that, to me, Carolina and other ACC schools could get squeezed from the Big East, from Gonzaga, in the same way, I had to get a drink, that they're being squeezed just by the bigger money SEC and Big Ten. So if that's true, that's going to put the ACC in a continued odd spot. Now, another thing with the House settlement, as I just think about other observations that have been rolling around in my head. With 95% of the rev share being typically, unless Carolina decides to do something different, but with the expectation being that 95% of the rev share, again, football and men's and women's basketball getting all that, and 5% going to the rest of Carolina's 25 other varsity athletic teams. I know they are not as high level rev as everything else, but is that going to put Bubba Cunningham in an odd spot where he's going to have to make tough decisions like so many did during COVID, right? Like people started canceling teams during COVID, things like that. This is a hallmark of North Carolina athletics, to have all of these various sports, not just fielding teams, but fielding wildly successful teams. And so to me, this rev share side of things is bad news for those teams. It makes me nervous for them. Now, I know that it is an important thing to Bubba Cunningham. I believe that he and the other people in leadership will fight for all of these teams and work to find creative solutions to continue to make that work. Because that is, again, the very DNA of North Carolina Tar Heels athletics. But at the same time, very curious to see what happens with it all. And as part of that, what are the Title IX ramifications of this? Will Title IX have any say in how that $20.5 million revenue share is doled out? Or will the House settlement have precedence over Title IX in matters of divvying out rev share? It's just it's murky, man. The water is so murky with some of this, and it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with it all. And as I said on yesterday's show about the House settlement, to me, this is not the end game of where college athletics are going to end up or be or finalize. I think it's ultimately just another stepping stone to full-on professionalization of college athletics, meaning things like student athletes being employees of the institution, of more unions forming, of a collective bargaining agreement, things like that. I don't know that we will get there, but I don't think this is the end game where we're at right now. But there's a whole bunch of questions to be answered for the House settlement with where we are, including all those things we just talked about. So another day, more questions asked, fewer answers given. And so we'll continue. They're going to continue to crop up. And so that's what that is. All right, guys, that's it for today's show. Thanks so much for being with us here on Locked On Tar Heels. I hope you enjoyed just going through these various things, a little basketball, a little football, a little House settlement, really interesting stuff. I've been saying it the last couple of days, but if you have questions about the House settlement, hit me with it, man. Would love to help. I've been doing a lot of reading on it, a lot of research, a lot of talking to people. And so while I'm not going to claim to be an expert in it, because I don't think anybody is at this point, I do feel like I've been able to gain some good knowledge on it. So would be happy to help you in that way, because that's literally why I'm here, is to inform you, to entertain you, to make you laugh, to make you cry, and to come hang out, right? That's why we're here. So if you've not subscribed to Locked On Tar Heels on video and audio, make sure you do that so you don't miss a second. If you've not joined the Locked On Tar Heels Discord, we'd love to see you in there. That link is in the show notes. And if you want to go deeper with the show, become a Locked On Tar Heels Insider. Would love to have you. There's great perks along with it. That link is also in the show notes. A great way to help support the show. Y'all, it's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. We'll talk again tomorrow. But until then, peace.